I want to share with you how I became so passionate about creating a framework for having balanced conversations. And in a nutshell, it's because I failed fabulously. And I vowed to never have the experience that I had when I was a director in Senator Cole's office. And there was an employee, I'm going to call him Stan, who was not performing well. And instead of having a direct conversation where I stated clearly and articulated what the expectations were and where he was not meeting those expectations, and designing with him what it would look like and doing a performance improvement plan, instead, I avoided these conversations and I did not lead with courage. I did not have a balanced conversation to say what I needed and wanted for the senator and the senator's office, and ask what he needed and wanted in order to perform. And so it got to the point where the chief of staff called from Washington, D.C. and said, Darcy, I gotta fly in next Friday and we're going to fire Stan. Just got another complaint from a constituent. And it was horrendous. The conversation, Stan felt blindsided, even though he had been underperforming. It really wasn't fair to him, because as a manager, I didn't sit down and give him a chance to improve. And instead, we fired him. I was nervous that I was going to run into him at the grocery store. It was awful. And I determined that moment that I needed to do better and I needed to learn how to do better. So fast forward, got a ton of training and coaching. And a couple of years later, we had another employee in the senator's office. I'm going to call him Joe, where he also was not performing well. And it got to the point where the chief of staff called and said, oh, Darcy, we got to let him go. I'm going to come out in a couple of weeks from DC. And I said, you know what, can you hold just for a minute and just give me some time? He's like, yeah, no problem. So I called Joe into the office and I said, you know, Joe, we've been working so hard to get your performance up to the level and to get you trained and up to speed. And as you know, the senator has really high standards and high expectations. And my job is to hold the bar very high. And you came in and we've been working and coaching and having conversations, and your skills have improved. You've gotten so much better, but there's still a gap. And I'm not sure what else to do to close the gap. I'm 100% all in to help you and to coach you and to give you the resources and training and skills you need to close the gap, but I'm not sure what else to do. And so I want to just ask you what you need. And Joe said, I don't know, Darcy, if I can close the gap. This job is different and harder than I thought. Should I quit? And I said, you know, Joe, I can't say what's right for you. I can tell you, though, that the closing the gap doesn't mean that the bar is going to get lowered. The expectations are going to stay there. So the gap to close it has to go up. And I'm all in to support you. Do you want a couple days to think about it? He said, yeah. He came back a few days later and he said, I'm just realizing that this isn't the right fit for me. I think I want to resign. And so we designed his resignation alliance. What would that look like if it felt good from your end? And he said, well, maybe you could support me in helping me update my LinkedIn profile. Would you give me a positive recommendation? And I said, you know, on these skills, I absolutely would. If they ask about your weaknesses, here's what my answer would be. And he's like, yeah, that's fair. And I said, if we hire a new person before you leave, would you be willing to train them? And he said, yes, of course. And so I called back the chief of staff in DC and I said, okay, Joe's resigning. Here's his date. Here's our transition plan. Here's what it's going to look like. And he said, what? You mean we don't have to fire him? I don't have to fly out and have a horrible conversation? We don't have to worry about him going postal? And I said, no, it's all good. So from my journey to having balanced conversations, I realized and I built my skills to be able to have the courage to be direct. Say that direct message with compassion so it can be heard, and then have the curiosity to find out someone else's truth and what they need. And it went so much better. So that's what's possible with this. And I've used this model so many times since then. And this will be a framework that you can use, these 5 steps to having balanced conversations, whether they are small or big conversations that you need to have.